Hi, everyone. This is Brian. We'll give folks a few minutes to join. Hey, Greg, if you're on, can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yeah, looks good. Morning,
Thank you.
Brian. Yep.
Morning. For those that are joining, we'll just give folks another minute or two here, and then we'll get started. All right, I have 8:04 Pacific, so we'll go ahead and get started. I see at least one of our presenters on the call so far. Uh, So welcome to the first MHS public meeting for the new year. Today we have three updates. We have Dirk giving us an update on Edge MHS. Tim will give a short update on SCM and our plans for the new year. And then Phil will give an update on the plug and play group. CRPS doesn't have an update this month. We're working on getting the final touches on the new spec released. With that, Dirk, you want to take it away?
Well, I do if I can get off mute, Brian. You know, so.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Good, so that's good. So the Edge MHS workstream update, we have completed the 0.9 revision of the Edge MHS specification. It's available at the link that's located here. We also published the first renditions of the 3D models of that specification. Between 0.7 and 0.9, there was really no major changes. It was mostly cleanup, dock cleanup. We added the requirements table at the beginning of the document was the largest change, where we tried to pull out all the requirements into a more of a listing in the front, like like you've seen in the other DC-MHS documents. Between 0.5 and 0.7, there was a mounting hole change on the left-hand side. I explained that in the last public meeting that we had, which was the intention behind that was to allow migration to 162 millimeters if we ever saw the community essentially asking, heavily for that 162 millimeter width design, and that would constitute a different class. At this point in time, there's no plans to proceed forward with that, but this was provisioning to ensure that if we did need to go down that path, we had a path forward without changing the compatibility goals that we would have to allow all of these different HBMs to work in the larger size chassis. With that said, the team is looking for feedback as we progress to revision 1.0 and the formal submission. We're wanting to get formal submission by OCP EMEA Summit in April. So that takes some time to do. So we're working backwards. We're going to try to close the 1.0 spec sometime in March. So we're looking for feedback from anybody currently on the specifications. I do know several designs that are ongoing with it. So far, the feedback we've incorporated what feedback we've gotten from there, but would love to hear from others on the specification before we button it up and call 1.0 complete. Any comments or questions?
Okay. Thanks, Dirk. Let's see, Tim.
Hello.
Hey, can you give us an update on SCM?
Sure. Yeah, SCM 2.2 and the common circuits are stable, no ongoing work, no backlog. It's doing its thing. The Rev 3.0 work group's well underway. Definitely welcome more. It's a really good time if others are interested in joining. We're focusing on a more scalable interface design, looking forward, configuring configuration pressure testing, looking at definitely multi-node on one HBM, multi-HBM, and then potentially multi-node on multi-HBM with and without interposer, which was an issue with how the HBM common circuit type 2 came in, because you had options there. And then this more revolutionary with and without auxiliary management controller at different destinations, which allow for interface consolidation, and generating these buses at the destination so that you have best bandwidth and signal integrity and that kind of stuff. And looking to try to improve the out-of-band bandwidth through the different bus interfaces chosen. And then the idea is to set it up as a base set of interfaces, and then which node you're managing, and then a innovation zone for the miscellaneous, so that there's better interoperability in the future by having less miscellaneous choices of functions per pin. the LTPI protocol specifications being updated for robustness mainly. I think they're trying to add a link layer or something in there to make it more usable. And then we don't really have a timetable right now set for the first public release because we're right in the middle of trying to narrow the scope of exactly what's in and out of scope, but progressing through, I think for sure by the fall summit. I just don't think there's anything by the spring summit that we'll be able to share specifics on.
Can you add if you see any changes to the connector or the form factors that are defined to date for 2.2?
Right. So 2.2 didn't obviously introduced, most people use the horizontal form factor. It introduced the compact form factor. There's two tall vertical form factors that are not that popular, is my understanding in general. The 3.0, we're still looking at it because the starting point would start with the same 4C plus class connector. Obviously, there's some keying or something there for making sure it's, you don't have old module and new system and vice versa, the cross plugging problem. But looking to use that type of connectorization in order to build up the units from the innovation zone, the base, and then each node that you're wanting to manage can scale accordingly. So you can imagine if you're looking at multi-node on one HPM and multi-HPM, those have some sort of disagreements on how you would go about optimizing that. And so that's where we're in trying to get everyone possible's feedback of the types of configurations that you're going to be wanting to use an SCM type approach on in many years to come, and trying to figure out how to do that. We do understand that, and we're playing out every scenario, and then we hope to wean the scenarios that people aren't that interested in. For example, how much do you invest in multi-HPM without an interposer? Obviously you have a lot more things that you're trying to stack up. So nobody's talked about the form factor, but the connectorization is hopefully intended to use the same family of connectors in terms of signal integrity and ubiquity.
So on that, Tim, if you do eventually decide on a different connector or changes to the form factor, we may need to update some of the HPM specs and or the connector data sheets. So just make sure you keep the form factor teams up to date on that.
Yeah, for sure. Right now it's still in the logical domain and the bus, sunsetting some old interface, that kind of stuff, and trying to actually make it more scalable. But absolutely trying to first and foremost optimize for one-to-one when BMC subsystem managing one node, but then trying to do what we need to enable people to extend that to multi-node and multi-HPM. Knowing that even though they're niche and probably will still be niche, there's a growing capabilities, especially with the approach around the auxiliary management controller that allows the abstraction by terminating these host interfaces before they traverse the SCI, close to the destination. So that's sort of a more revolutionary trend that a lot are looking at to say, yeah, it's cheaper and a lot more scalable and all these different pros if you were able to have a bridge type component that we're also working with major silicon providers, CPUs, GPUs, et cetera, on taking that auxiliary management controller approach to on the HVM, then ultimately on the substrate, and ultimately in their dies, so that the longer term out of band management strategy can be more scalable in terms of using cheap hubs and whatnot in order to get to the destination. So better signal integrity, higher bandwidth to be able to get. And then it's playing in concert with there's an effort going on called OBMF, Open Boot Management Framework within OCP, that is also looking at the protocols to tunnel some of those legacy type of interfaces over USB, like eSPI, for example. But yeah, I totally understood that this
Yeah.
isn't a form factor in isolation. It has to work with the system, has to work with HPMs. We're also trying to do everything we can to try to get some convergence there with some other similar but not exactly the same architectures like MTX, BMC cards, is one of those types of examples that we're trying to look at things holistically and say, hey, if we can do all this right or better in a more interoperable, scalable way, and not cause major disruptions, obviously, to the mechanical domain and whatnot, that we think we're moving in the right direction. But there's definitely roadmaps and some economics that are playing in and trying to prune the combinations that people are actually wanting to productize.
In multi-node here, is it referring to two or more than two?
We did a survey amongst members and we didn't get everyone's feedback, but every feedback so far has said two is an absolute and four is an absolute preference. We know that we have heard in the past that multi and that's node, node is a bootable SMP domain is the term there. And whether it's on a single HPM or multi HPM, so those are the combos we're looking at. But nobody's come forth with something that says more than four. There's BMCs out there, depending on which interfaces and how you go about abstracting. The main issue with the scaling is with this aux management controller approach, and is the PCIe is foundational, and what you do with video, PCI VDM, MMBI over PCIe, whether the BMCs are integrating USB host controllers inside because there's synergy with other management and security type features if they're being jettisoned out of most of the chipsets. So there's, a different play there. So we haven't heard anyone saying more than four, but the connectorization approach is attacking it, trying to reach four.
Okay, so the shared elements you just mentioned, video and other things, is of course true based on our past experience. But as you know, our future experience might include things for memory and storage sharing. So this particular controller stepping outside of management and security, SCM, will it try to do things similar to CXL Fabric Manager?
The interfaces that in the discussions within the workstream right now are still limited to actually trying to do more consolidation, like a PCI by one Gen 4 kind of thing. But in the past, as you know, we had a by 4, up to a by 4, and then 2 by 1s for USB and BMC. We need to continue to work this if people are wanting something like in the past, it was a Gen 5 by 4. There were some member companies that expressed high interest in doing something in more bandwidth wise into the host domain. And there are some emerging use cases around that, independent of the ones you just mentioned, that could want that. So we're right in the meat of trying to figure out what is the maximum bandwidth that we're going to need. And that's kind of independent of whether those functions like a host utility NIC, host, boot storage, whatever other kinds of functions would be integrated into a BMC SoC or, off-the-shelf parts on the same SCM board or dedicated boards. Because I know some company was using a by 4 Gen 5 for a security type float engine or something that just happened to be on this card. So it is a gray zone between management and security, and now getting more into the miscellaneous other aspects of the host plane.
Okay, so basically, the role, if the team decides the role is still security and management, that's one approach. Another one is, since new capabilities are coming out, if another role is given to this device, the role of more than just baseboard management, but chassis management or fabric management, I don't know if that debate has happened and if the result is out.
Yeah, there has been people looking at the DCSEM in order as a generic management card that they can plug into other classes of devices that aren't a typical host managed server, inclusive of rack management, chassis management, of a L11 type component, I don't know, power switch or something like that. Um, the DCSEM current and always has been mantra, fundamental philosophy has been direct management of a host bootable domain. However, it has been more of a gray zone, and I do not believe that there's advocates currently in the forum that are vying for additional types of feature creep. It's more around the optimizations and the evolution of the interfaces and the interface consolidation kind of stuff, and less. I haven't heard a lot of push toward, oh, yeah, no, it's non-negotiable. We need a higher bandwidth interface for some other types of things that you're wanting to live within this module's physical domain or area. So
Right, Tim, just to be clear, I'm not right now concerned about the bandwidth aspect, just the logical role, and therefore perhaps sideband signal might be needed. But that's okay. All right, we can.
yeah, this is not a chassis manager. If there is there, I know that there was like an open RMC. It was all software, I think, a subwork group. But if people are looking for a module, this great discussion that is more generic in nature, and this comes up quite often, we need to start working on, is it a compact form factor, and what types of interfaces would actually be those common types of interfaces that would be needed in those applications? Because some of those get more into industrial type use cases. They don't need any host domain. That it's far beyond managing an ARM or an x86 host domain and everything that's coupled to that.
Right. So maybe it just works out that a separate controller will be needed to do those roles. However, these two controllers need to be talking to each other. It might be the simplest way, and then some side channel. I don't know. At some point, maybe it is reserved. The two separate controllers can talk to each other.
Right. And exactly. And I want to mention that there has not been advocates for hot plug and redundancy within the SCM modules. That was slightly surprising to me because I've seen some people or some types of appliances try to do things of that nature, but there's nobody advocating for it in that work group. So if these types of trends of things that you're hearing here are resonating, we need more representation if there's more vision of the pressure testing of the types of things that you want an SCM for, or do we need to split it into also a more generic engine type of thing that's not really around direct management of a host domain?
Yeah, and that's sort of a good plug. The SCM 2.0 work is on hold for now. The 3.0 work is a different work group. So if you're not a current member of that work group and you have interest in, driving that forward, reach out to Tim or myself, and we can get you in contact. That's a great update, Tim. Any other questions for Tim?
Tim, do you happen to have a block diagram for these concepts to share in this forum?
I have block diagrams that I've created for the CLA group that shows all the permutations of what you see in that config pressure testing bullet, because we had to understand how all of the interfaces scale as we've gone through kind of a survey of what interfaces, how many, and what can sunset and this kind of thing. So it's moving in that direction. I don't have something that I can share locally. I'm sure that I would in the very first public release, if for non-CLAs, we would have the appropriate block diagrams that show, a top-down approach of what are the deltas, what is the scope, the types of applications that it's supporting and that's what's out of scope or are left to the implementer, like multi-node plus multi-HBM. That would be 4 nodes times 4 HBMs equals 16 node, that kind of thing. It all of a sudden becomes kind of untenable if we're talking about a slice of a slice of a slice of the market. So we're definitely hyper focused on the mainstream and converging AI and mainstream and low end and doing a lot of the things so that to help the economics of this and the usefulness of this as a form factor, and obviously optimizing for uh, trying to achieve the closer to the plug and play world that it's not as miscellaneous as it is right now, which has caused a lot of issues for new adopters to figure out. And that's why things like that comment circuit came up. But yep, definitely want representation. I know we're a broken record on that, but can definitely share things when we push out I guess a 0.3 or 0.5, whatever the first release is. And I'm just not thinking that, for sure that would happen by the spring summit, but for sure by the fall summit. And as soon as we can get something that we can get in the public domain, we absolutely will.
Any other questions for Tim? Okay, thank you, Tim. Phil, are you on?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Thanks. I'm Phil Leach, work stream lead for the modular plug and play work stream. Just here to give you a bit of an update. There's some items here that we actually presented last time, which just reminding folks that we did release a 0.5 spec last year in September in advance of the OCP summit last year, and the replay and slides are available. Essentially what we've been focusing on is making progress on the 0.7 spec. We do intend to have that, at least the target is on or around OCP EMEA regional summit in April, towards the end of April. That's our, it's our goal. We'll see if we can make it. We did make a change to, we used to have 2 meetings for the core and brew discovery boot spec, and then another meeting for the FPGA spec. We decided to combine that together based off of everybody's availability. It's essentially we wanted to make sure that folks could attend the meetings, on a weekly basis, since there were 2 meetings and there's a lot of overlap, and that was causing some struggle with a lot of folks. So we did reduce it down to a single meeting. It did change our schedule a bit, but we still believe we can target the 0.7 release at the end of April. One of the things that we spent a lot of time on, we're very proud of, is we did 2-hour tech talks last year, one in November and the other one in December. And we really would like folks to review, watch those tech talks. If you didn't get a chance to go, we thank you if you did. There's the replays and the slides there, because we really want to get a lot of feedback from the industry to make sure that we're on the right track. We think we are, but just want to make sure that we hear from everyone, and please provide that feedback. We'll just collect it through the MHS public that mailing list. But review the specs, review the tech talks, and if you're not familiar with modular plug and play, start with the OCP summit first. That's gives you the overview, and then those 2 tech talks are a 2 hours each, and they're quite in depth. But hopefully it's you're interested. It's time well spent, and we love to hear from you. And that's pretty much the update. So looking towards the OCP EMEA regional summit, hopefully we'll be able to present something there. Trying to have something at that summit that's aligned to the changes in the 0.7. That's pretty much the update. Any questions, comments?
Okay. Thanks a lot, Phil.
Thanks.
That is all we have for this month. Is there any last minute questions for the team in general? Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us, and I'll post these slides and send out the meeting recording after it's ready. Have a great month, and we'll talk to you next month.
See you.
Bye, guys.